Avigdor Lieberman has already filled a list of senior positions in the government, both under Netanyahu and in the change government. But Yuval Karni will ask him how he would operate vis-à-vis Iran and the Palestinian scene. For him to this time sit in the chair of the Prime Minister. Hello, head of Israel Beiteinu, Avigdor Lieberman. Thank you for joining us. You refer to the existing government as the October 7th massacre government, but such a tragic event, because could it not have happened also under a changed government? It would never have happened if I was in office. The writing was on the wall already in 2016. I delivered an 11-page document to the then Prime Minister and Chief of Staff. I wrote that a Nukhba force can attack the State of Israel, take over communities, take hostages, etc. And I also stated the date. But the Nukhba don't care who the Prime Minister is. But remember that when I resigned, I demanded an offensive attack, a preventive attack. I demanded taking out the seniors of Hamas, and this wasn't done based on all sorts of considerations. Like Netanyahu insisted on giving Qatari money to Hamas and not taking out the Hamas leadership. Everything was ready. All that was needed was to press a button and to take out the senior leadership, and the one who insisted not to do it was Benjamin Netanyahu. And also on the preventive offensive attack, he insisted not to do it, and then I resigned. So Netanyahu prevented a preventive attack that could have prevented October 7th, and he prevented taking out the senior leadership of Hamas. And this was in 2018. That was when I resigned. And on the next day, I said, any agreement for ceasefire with Hamas, together with Qatari money, is giving into terrorism. What you're doing is you're buying short-term quiet at the cost of long-term security. So, and what you're telling us today, do you think that a National Commission of Inquiry can it reveal the truth on October 7th and how it couldn't be prevented? Of course, everything's documented. These were things that were said in cabinet meetings. Everything's recorded and filmed, and there are transcripts and minutes. Everything is documented. So to ask you about the Gaza Strip, and by the way, also about the Gaza Strip and Lebanon, there were plans. That when I was Minister of Defense, Eyal Zamir was chief of the Southern Command, and I approved an operation for 45 days to take out the senior leadership of Hamas. Nothing happened. The plan wasn't materialized. And likewise about Lebanon. To be clear, on the 30th of July, 2017, I called a meeting as Minister of Defense with the leadership of the Chief of Staff, with previous generals, and I said, let's do a preventive offensive against Hezbollah. This policy of containment and this war between the campaign, between the wars, all of it led to where we came to. But we're very far from absolute victory, including disarmament of Hamas. How would you now address this situation that we have with Hamas still in power? The problem is that we have 6 outstanding fronts also with Hamas and Hezbollah, with the Houthis, Syria, Iran, and Judea and Samaria. That's very tense. What we need to do is set a clear priorities on what we will handle, and we need to reach determination on each front. We need to determine what that determination is vis-a-vis each front. The centers that need to, what we need to do is change the security concept. No more containment or territory for peace. We need an offensive and we need determination. We need to decide what that means. So, speaking of Iran, so the prospect of another war with Iran, like in the last weekend, according to public media. So do we need to become accustomed to having rounds against Iran? We must not reach a situation where we have constant rounds. We've had a war of attrition for 3 years, and that is unreasonable, inconceivable. It's exhausting to society and the economy and everything. So we need to go back to the keyword of determination. Fighting with Iran is unavoidable. But we've already done that. What you can suggest something what we haven't done before. The next war has to be the last one. But in the Iran case, determination is a regime change. We need to understand that most of the advanced countries in the world now can reach a nuclear war, a nuclear bomb. It's within 2 or 3 months. It's a political decision. Spain, Japan, or Germany, it's a political decision. If those countries decide to manufacture nuclear bombs, they have the infrastructure and the people. No more than 3 months. Nobody is concerned about Japan and Germany. We're all concerned about Iran because of the government and the nature of the regime. And that's why the decision, the determination there is to change the regime. But it's been tried. Mr. Lieberman, the Americans tried. The Mossad tried. They took Ahmadinejad, according to foreign publications, to try to produce an alternative regime. But everything was done in a disorganized fashion. What Israel did is what we need to not do. We here will not be able to go into much further detail, but we need to study how not to do something. And that is exactly what happened in the previous attempt. And I'm telling you that it's possible. When the Iranians come out to demonstrate and the Basij killed 40,000 Iranians, they weren't protesting against the nuclear bomb or Israel. They were protesting against the cost of living, the inflation. Nothing changed. On the contrary, everything got worse. So all the conditions are there. We need to do this smartly, with responsibility, not through improvisation. And I don't want to add further. Another interesting topic that I heard you speak about is that you said that over the years you suggested establishing a missile corps rather than relying only on the Air Force. Do you think we should have attacked Iran with missiles? In defense, in the area of defense, we need to make 3 decisions. 1, to change the security concept. As I said, no territory for peace, no more. So, nobody really talking about that today. No containment, no campaign between the wars, but rather preemptive attacks and decision, determination. No conflict should take more than 40, 45 days. It's been going on for 3 years. And if you can't decide a campaign over 3 years, they'll never be able to do it. We need to understand that. And the next is a missile corps. Now, when we attack Iran, the plane and the armament and the in-flight fueling and the satellites and radar systems are all American. And we need to go through the airspace of another country. And for that, we need U.S. coordination. So it's an impossible situation. With a missile corps, you press the button, and within 10 minutes, a ballistic missile explodes anywhere in Iran. You're not endangering the pilot or the Air Force. Why haven't we done this? I started to But the most effective tool that we have now is the same tool that I initiated as Minister of Defense. Due to censorship, I can't tell you more, but unfortunately, after I left the Ministry of Defense, this initiative was buried, both the missile corps and the sheltering for the north, because they're identified with Lieberman. The billions that dedicated to protecting the north and the missile corps. But did Netanyahu think that this was a good plan for Israel's security needs? He voted in favor of it in the cabinet. But as soon as I left, because it was identified with me, and we need to understand that one day we can have a problem with the United States. Democrats or the progressive in power. Before the Six-Day War, we relied on France. Then we didn't have the F-35. We had Mirage planes. I don't know if you were born then, but I know those planes, the Mirage. And they put an embargo. So, and we can't do the same again. We need to develop our own ballistic missiles. We've seen how effective it is on the Iranian side, and there is no reason why we shouldn't have a missile corps, even better than what they have. And we need a universal draft law, no exemptions, no stories, no relying on this this meeting in '52 between the Chazon Ish and Ben-Gurion. And if you quote Ben-Gurion, then you need to actually go deeper into history. In retrospect, in Ben-Gurion already in '58 regretted it, and he wrote a letter to the chief rabbi Yitzhak Herzog, and he expressed regret of that decision. And then in '63 another document where he wrote a letter to Eshkol, the prime minister. Okay, and I'm telling you, if there will not be a universal draft law and the services extended for the soldiers, then ultimately all the citizens of Israel will need to pay income tax at least 16% more, because there'll be direct taxing 16% more if there's no universal draft law. Okay, so to paraphrase what Gadi Eisenkot said earlier, he said, your law is very populist. You think that soon you'll say, I'm drafting everyone, everybody will come. You can't cause them to draft. You can't arrest them. You can't do enforcement against the draft dodgers. This law was presented in May 2023, and Gadi Eisenkot was a member of Knesset, and he voted in favor. Your law, in favor of your law, yes, in favor of my law. And my law says something very simple. If you're not drafted to the IDF, you go to a national civilian route. Druze, Cherkessi, Arab, etc. If they don't come, those yeshiva students won't get allowances. The yeshiva won't get discounts. They won't get payment for it. They won't get discounts in daycare centers and municipal taxes. So we don't need to chase each dodge evader, but they won't be able to serve in government, local government. And if you do that, they will stand in line to draft. If we have all the sanctions, including the criminal record, then we'll have two routes. I don't expect either the ultra-Orthodox or the Arabs. I don't expect them to be pilots, but they can be firefighters and doctors. So just to add. So ending on political, do you see yourself as the most suitable candidate for the change bloc? But Gadi Eisenkot gets more seats than you, and Bennett likewise. Why do you insist on being the candidate for prime minister? What I insist on is replacing this government, which is leading us to a halachic state and to a destruction of our home. Look at the last week. the studying in the academy with the separation between men and women, separate pedestrian walking for men and women in Bnei Brak. This government needs to be taken away from power. Now, sometimes my impression is that the media is all part of Netanyahu's campaign. Netanyahu very much wants us to talk about who's first, who's second, how many seats, yes, no, Mansour Abbas. He wants to distract attention from the responsibility for October 7th, the massacre, from the loss of governance in internal security, and to draw away attention from us having 6 open fronts for 3 years, and from the strategic failure only recently, where the Americans decide to supply F-35 to Turkey, aircraft to Turkey, and to start a nuclear program in Saudi Arabia. He wants to evade it, and we shouldn't help him. Okay, we can. So our last question: the state of Israel resides in the heart of a Muslim population, that some of which will never accept us being here. What is your solution? 98% of all the bloodshed in the Middle East is between Muslims among themselves, and not between us and them. It's Sudan, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia. Now there is an understanding, the moderate Sunni states understand that their enemy is not the Jews, not the Zionism, not Israel, but the radical groups within the Muslim society. And we can build alliances and campaigns and not be isolated. But for that, we need a vision. We need a vision and execution power. This government has no power, no executive capabilities. And the last sentence: the problem of this government is that it's a sectorial government, and it's not bipartisan, it's not Zionist. Each sector takes care of its own sector. Smotrich takes care of his own sector, and Netanyahu takes care only of the bloc, and nobody takes care of the state. The next government must be bipartisan and Zionist. Head of Israel Beiteinu, Avigdor Lieberman, thank you very much.